Yeah, baby! We won the first round against the Dallas Stars. Even more exciting, oh boy, we get to play the Edmonton Oilers in the second round. Can't hardly wait. It's only been 31 years. Anyway, it's time for another episode of... Hi there, it's Brett Hornby here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, and welcome back to another episode of my Calgary Flames in the Stanley Cup playoffs. We are still in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Season 4, episode number 18, and boy, not only we actually won a playoff series, which is definitely a still rare thing in this part of town, this part of the country, but even rarer, we get to finally play the Edmonton Oilers. Yes! I'm so freaking excited for this series, and I am so excited to preview this series. So before I get into my notes and break down the series and give my thoughts and what I expect to happen and my prediction, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, home of the Flames have been Roughnecks and Stampeders, as well as the Cavalry FC. Just make sure you hit like, subscribe. I have my other social links down in the description below. And of course I have my second channel in Brett Hornby Shorts, where I exclusively put my short form content on there. So I appreciate like, subscribe both here on my main channel as well as my second channel. I mean, so freaking close to getting 400 subscribers, so just get me over that and then get to the next 400 and 500, and you know what I mean? So I'd like to continue growing on this platform. Oh yeah, weather suck. Gotta get that chat going. I'm on this side of the Battle of Alberta, proudly wearing red. I'm just so freaking happy that finally, both Calgary and Edmonton, they get to actually battle, and they explain why it's been 31 years as part of this episode. So how did we get here? Well, obviously both Calgary and Edmonton had to make the playoffs, which when I get to the why it's been so long, both teams making the playoffs at the same time hasn't happened very often. But just to quickly recap, the Calgary Flames, they won the Pacific Division with a 50-21-11 record for 111 points, so they had the first seed in the Pacific Division, while the Edmonton Oilers actually were second in the Pacific Division with a 49-27-6 record for 104 points for second. So both teams needed all 7 games for their respective playoff series in the first round. I'm going to say it was a different couple of series. That I'm going to say some of the numbers might be skewed a bit, considering how the series played out for both teams, but obviously my Calgary Flames, we needed all 7 games, but we ultimately defeated the Dallas Stars 4-3. We did win the first game 1-0. However, we lost the second game, game 2, 2-0, and then we lost game 3, 2-1, so we were down 2-1 to Dallas, and then we won 4-1 to tie the series up at 2, and then we won the series, or won the game 3-1, game 5, this is back at home, and then we lost game 6, 4-2, and then game 7, of course the Calgary Flames need to make it as scary as possible, as they won 3-2 in overtime. So it was definitely not as much scoring in the series between the Calgary Flames and the Dallas Stars. It was definitely a goaltender's duel. Our goaltender, as great as Jacob Markstrom was, he actually was outshadowed by Jake Oettinger. That's how I can sum up this series. Well, the Edmonton Oilers, they drew the Los Angeles Kings, while Calgary was the #1 Pacific Division team. They were taking on the #1 wildcard team because they were the second best record in the Western Conference. While the Edmonton Oilers, they finished second in the Pacific Division, they drew the Los Angeles Kings. They were third in the Pacific Division, and this was a kind of a strange series that both teams kind of had blowout games. I mean, the first game, Edmonton won 4-3, but then they lost game 2, 6-0. But then they won game 3, 8-2, and then they lost game 4, 4-0. And then they lost game 5 back in Edmonton, 5-4 in overtime, so Edmonton was down 3-2, just similar to Calgary was down at one point in the series, but Edmonton, they were facing elimination the last 2 games, so they won game 6, 4-2, and then ultimately they closed the series out with a 2-0 victory. So as I say, both teams, they needed all 7 games for totally different reasons to have this Battle of Alberta right now today. Keep in mind, the last time we were playing Edmonton in the playoffs back in 1991, I was still having a social time at school at James Short Memorial back in grade 3 when I was a much younger, smaller person back then. Funny how that works. So let's look at the leaders for the both teams. Kind of do both the regular season and playoffs just to adjust things up. That now we have Calgary and Edmonton facing off against each other. I think I heard us figure that 4 of the top 9 scorers will be in this series, so that's definitely another thing to look forward to beyond just the natural rivalry that the two Alberta cities have. But in the regular season, Johnny Gaudreau led the team with 115 points in the regular season, while Matthew Tkachuk had 104 points, and then both Matthew Tkachuk and Elias Lindholm had 42 goals, leading the team in scoring, and Johnny Gaudreau had 75 assists. Well, Jacob Markstrom in the regular season, who actually is good enough that he got nominated for the Vezina Trophy, and then Elias Lindholm actually recently got nominated for the Selke Trophy for the best defensive forward. Jacob Markstrom, he had a 37-15-9 record for a .222 goals against average, a .922 save percentage, and 9 shutouts. That was in the regular season. However, in the playoffs, considering the Calgary Flames were facing a brick wall known as Jake Oettinger, Johnny Gaudreau actually led the team in playoff scoring with 8 points. Elias Lindholm had 3 goals. Johnny Gaudreau had 6 points, and I'll also highlight that Johnny Gaudreau did only score 2 goals in the first round, but it was when he scored those 2 goals, that shootout winner in Game 4, and the overtime winner in Game 7, that finally put me at ease and got me excited that we won the series and played Edmonton. And then Jacob Markstrom, listen to these numbers, and then he was the second best goalie in the series for the Calgary Flames. Jacob Markstrom was 4-3. He had a 153 goals against average, a 943 save percentage, which one shutout. 943 save percentage was good enough to be the best save percentage in franchise history for the Calgary Flames in a playoff series. Jake Gaudreau, he had something ridiculous like 955. So that was something the Calgary Flames had to outlast, was Jake Oettinger, which I think might favor the Calgary Flames in terms of attacking this series. So when you look at the Edmonton Oilers leaders in the regular season, well, Connor McDavid, he had 123 points in the regular season, and he won the Art Ross for most points. Leon Draisaitl, he had 110 points as well, so that's where you see the 4 of the top 9 scorers in the National Hockey League will be in this series. Leon Draisaitl led the team with 55 goals, while Connor McDavid, he also had 44 goals for the Edmonton Oilers, so both Draisaitl and McDavid had more goals than Calgary's top goal scorers. Connor McDavid had 79 assists, and then I had to showcase both goalies for stats because actually Mikko Koskinen, he actually had more starts, more playing time as Mike Smith had some injuries. But in the regular season, Mikko Koskinen, he was 27-12-4, although he had the .310 goals against average, a 903 save percentage with 1 shutout, while Mike Smith was going more apparent that he was going to be the goalie going down the stretch. And oh yeah, that's the same Mike Smith that used to play for us. He had some shots to send to Calgary I hear. In the regular season, Mike Smith was 16-9-2. He had a 281 goals against average, a 915 save percentage with 2 shutouts. Well, in the playoffs, definitely the big goal scorers showed up for the Edmonton Oilers, especially in the 2 blowout games, and Connor McDavid definitely was huge in Game 7 when Edmonton needed the most, just like Johnny Gaudreau was for Calgary. Well, Connor McDavid, he had 14 points in 7 games. So definitely he's doing his part. And then Evander Kane, he's been a find for the Edmonton Oilers after pretty much the San Jose Sharks terminated his contract. Both Evander Kane and Leon Draisaitl also had 9 points in the series. So that's another player to watch out for. And Evander Kane, he led the Edmonton Oilers in goals with 7. And then Connor McDavid had 10 assists. So I think some poolies, you're probably going to be collecting a lot more points if you had some of those players in your pool. So then Mike Smith, he actually had a pretty good series despite the fact that there were some blowout games. He had a 4-3 record. He had a 229 goals against average and a 938 save percentage. So he definitely upped his ante in the playoffs, and 2 shutouts. But there were a couple blowout games on the other end for the Edmonton Oilers. So that's just the leaders looking at the Calgary Flames and the Edmonton Oilers. There definitely was more offense in the Edmonton-Los Angeles series than the Calgary-Dallas series, but pretty much the usual suspects were in the top leaders for both sides, and that's definitely something I look forward to in this series as well. So now if we look at the playoff history for both teams, and for the case with the Calgary Flames, they started off in Atlanta. And in the case of the Edmonton Oilers, they started off as the Alberta Oilers, and they played in the World Hockey Association. So I'll touch upon both playoff history, but first the Flames franchise started off in Atlanta from 1972 to 73. So 1970-73 season to the 1979-80 season. They made the playoffs in 6 of those 8 seasons, but they had never gotten past the first round. Well, the Calgary Flames, this is their 42nd season playing in Calgary since the 1980-81 season. They made the playoffs in 25 of 42 years, and this marks the 9th time of those 25 times that we made the playoffs that we got out of the first round. Gives you an idea how rare it is, especially after winning the Stanley Cup in 1989, and why first round in Game 7 scares me as a fan, and I made a video about that before Game 7, and thankfully we're on the right end of it. But this is the first time the Calgary Flames have made it into the second round since 2015, and like I said, this is only the 3rd time they made it past the first round since 1989. And then of the 9 appearances that they've gone to the second round, they did make 4 appearances to the conference championship, so we're just under 50% in that, but I think the history between these 2 teams will tell you why. But the 4 times that the Flames made it to the conference championship was in 1981, 1986, 1989, and 2004. So Calgary's looking to get back to the Final Four in the conference championship for the first time in 18 years since 2004. And then they made 3 appearances in the Stanley Cup final in 1986, 1989, and 2004. So we're also looking to get back there. Since 2004, hence that intro. So now if you look at the Edmonton Oilers, just playoff history themselves, they started off as the Alberta Oilers, and then they were the Edmonton Oilers in the defunct World Hockey Association, as the Edmonton Oilers were in the World Hockey Association from 1972-73, so they were established as a team at the same time as the Atlanta Flames, and they were in the World Hockey Association until 1978-79, before they got merged in with the National Hockey League, with the Winnipeg Jets, who are now the Phoenix, Arizona Coyotes, and the Hartford Whalers, who are now the Carolina Hurricanes, and the Quebec Nordiques, or now the Colorado Avalanche. And actually 3 of those 4 teams are still playing in the playoffs right now that were originally from the World Hockey Association. The Oilers made the playoffs 5 of those 7 seasons. The funnest season for the Edmonton Oilers while in the World Hockey Association was their last season in 1979, where they lost the Avco Cup championship to the Winnipeg Jets, and that's their Stanley Cup in the World Hockey Association. Now when it comes to the Edmonton Oilers in the National Hockey League, the Edmonton Oilers have been in the National Hockey League 1 year longer than the Calgary Flames, so from 1979 to 80 to present, the Edmonton Oilers have made the playoffs 24 of 43 seasons, so they made the playoffs one less time than the Calgary Flames have. However, the Edmonton Oilers have made it past the first round 15 times as opposed to Calgary's 9. This is the Edmonton Oilers' first time since the getting to the second round since 2017, and interestingly, both times that the Calgary Flames and the Edmonton Oilers made it to the second round, they bowed to the Anaheim Ducks on both those occasions in 2 different years. So, damn those Ducks. But of those 15 times that the Edmonton Oilers have made it to the second round, keep in mind they had stacked teams in the 1980s, they at least gone to the conference championships 9 times. As the Edmonton Oilers have made it to the conference championship in 1983, 1984, 1985, 1987, 1988, 1990, 1991, 1992, and 2006. So the Edmonton Oilers are looking to get back to the conference championship for the first time since 2006, when they went on that run, similar to the Calgary Flames 2 years earlier. And then the Edmonton Oilers have made it to the Stanley Cup Finals. They made 7 appearances in the Stanley Cup Finals, starting in 1983, 1984, 1985, 1987, 1988, 1990, and 2006. So the Edmonton Oilers are also looking to get back to the finals in a long time as well. And then, of course, Stanley Cup Championships. Calgary still has their one in 1989. We can debate, we have 2 from 2004, but we have to go by official, keep everything official and formal. Well, the Edmonton Oilers, they won 5 Stanley Cups. And they won their first one in 1984, second one in 1985, third one in 1987, fourth one in 1988, and their 5th one in 1990. So both Calgary and Edmonton, they're looking to end their 30-plus year Stanley Cup droughts in 2022. But this is now going to be the interesting part. This will be the 6th time that the Calgary Flames and the Edmonton Oilers have played each other in the playoffs. 5 times previous actually happened in the span from 1983 to 1991, and right now the Edmonton Oilers have a 4-1 edge when it comes to series. So the first version of the Battle of Alberta happened in 1983. This was the Smythe Division Finals, which was the second round at that time. Edmonton won that series 4-1. Well, the second time the Calgary Flames won that series, and I think the first time they had the Smythe Division Finals, I can highlight that was the last time that the Calgary Flames played in the Stampede Corral before they moved to the Olympic Saddledome at the time. And that was Edmonton's first time that they've went to the Stanley Cup Finals. 1984 Smythe Division Finals. We lost to the Edmonton Oilers, but this time in 7 games. I believe in that series, Ryan McDonald actually scored an overtime winner to force a Game 7. I know Ryan McDonald did score an overtime winner in that series, and I think it was to save off elimination. For the Calgary Flames, that's how I can highlight that series. So right now, 2-0 for Edmonton. 1986, this will be the famous or infamous series, if you want to call it. In 1986, Smythe Division Finals, once again another second round series. Calgary Flames were on the right end of this Battle of Alberta as they won that one 4-3, and all we can say is Steve Smith was the story for that series in Game 7 when Grant Fuhr deflected the puck off of Steve Smith's leg and went in his own net, and ultimately the Calgary Flames won that game. Bob Johnson found a way to neutralize the Edmonton Oilers attack, so there was a lot of storylines in that series, but Calgary was on the right end of that one. The only time we have beaten the Edmonton Oilers in Stanley Cup playoff history, and that's why when Steve Smith, every time he touched the puck in Calgary, we said shoot. Interestingly, eventually Steve Smith, he actually not only coached the Calgary Flames, he actually played for the Calgary Flames, and actually spent some time as captain of the Calgary Flames. So it was meant to be, at least for him to be a Calgary Flame. And then the next time the Calgary Flames The Edmonton Oilers met in the playoffs was in 1988. Once again, this was the Smythe Division Finals, second round. The Calgary Flames won the President's Trophy that season. However, they got swept by the Edmonton Oilers, and you know, at that series, that was Game 2. You've seen that highlight too many times where Wayne Gretzky comes down the Calgary zone and blasts an overtime winner over Mike Vernon's left shoulder. So you can highlight that moment. And then 1991, the last time that the Calgary Flames and Edmonton Oilers met, this was actually a first-round series. The Smythe Division semifinals, and the Calgary Flames, unfortunately, were on the wrong end of this one as the Edmonton Oilers won this one 4-3. This definitely, I remember that was a brutal series. Both teams were definitely at each other's throats. The Calgary Flames, I remember, were down 3 games to 1 in that series. Almost rallied back and probably should have won it in 3 straight. That was the series when Theoren Fleury scored that overtime winner in Edmonton and slid over the ice. All I remember is Game 7. We were up 3-0, looking to come back from 3 games to 1. Calgary had home ice at that time. And then Edmonton scored 4 goals and looked like that was it. And then we ultimately tied it up. However, Vesna he floated a puck behind Mike Vernon, and that was it. So, that is the Calgary Flames Edmonton Oilers playoff history. Definitely were a lot of bloodbath, some battles. Don't think you'll see as much of that today, but there'll definitely be a lot of hatred. It's going to get sparked up. So before we look into why it's been 31 years since the Calgary Flames and Edmonton Oilers met, let's talk about what happened after the Battle of Alberta, because it might have some weighting on what could happen this season. So what happened after each of those series? Well, in 1983, the Edmonton Oilers, they ultimately lost the Stanley Cup final to the New York Islanders. The New York Islanders won their 4th straight Stanley Cup. However, the Oilers definitely pushed the New York Islanders hard, where I heard that the New York Islanders, well, they probably were tired after playing all those series, that they said, boy, those Edmonton Oilers, they have what it takes to win the Cup. And then the next season, in 1984, the Edmonton Oilers, after they defeated the Calgary Flames, they came back and get some revenge on the New York Islanders and won the Stanley Cup. So, 2 Stanley Cup final appearances from the Battle of Alberta series. Well, you can make it 3 in 1986, when the Calgary Flames were on the right end of it. Ultimately, the Calgary Flames lost the Stanley Cup final to the Montreal Canadiens in 1986 because this goaltender named Patrick Waugh suddenly stoned the Calgary Flames and stole that series. That's what happened after we beat the Edmonton Oilers in an unusual fashion. And then in 1988, when we lost to the Edmonton Oilers in the second round, well, the Edmonton Oilers, they eventually went on to win the Stanley Cup. This time over the Boston Bruins. It was the last Stanley Cup the Edmonton Oilers won with Wayne Gretzky. And then in 1991, when we lost to the Edmonton Oilers in the first round, the Edmonton Oilers actually made a run to the Campbell Conference Final, but then got upset by the Minnesota North Stars. So 4 out of 5 Battle of Albertas. The winner at least went on to the Stanley Cup Final, with the 3 of the 4 being a Stanley Cup champion, all with the Edmonton Oilers. As keep in mind, during the 80s and 90s, mid to late 1980s and early 1990s, you could say the Edmonton Oilers and the Calgary Flames were the top 2 teams in the National Hockey League at the time, but it's just the playoff format and the division had them in the same spot that they always got stuck playing each other in the second round as opposed to the Stanley Cup Final. Why has it been 31 years since the Calgary Flames and the Edmonton Oilers are meeting in a series in the playoffs? Not trying to sound too much like Captain Obvious, you kind of need to have both teams make the playoffs. And believe it or not, since 1991, that hasn't happened very often. This is actually only the 3rd time since 1991 that both the Calgary Flames and the Edmonton Oilers have met in the playoffs, and it's only been the last couple of years that you can legitimately say both teams have been relevant. Because the other years that both teams made the playoffs, and if things would have played out differently, Calgary and Edmonton would have played each other in the playoffs. Well, the first time since 1991 that both Alberta teams made the playoffs was in 2006. And what almost happened? if the Calgary Flames would have finished off the deal against the Anaheim Ducks in 2006 in their first round series, Calgary would have played the Edmonton Oilers in the second round that year after when the Edmonton Oilers upset the Detroit Red Wings to ultimately make their run to the Stanley Cup final. The next time that both Calgary and Edmonton made the playoffs did not happen until 2017. And of course, once again, the Anaheim Ducks had to ruin things. As I remember, it came down to the last game of the regular season. And I was hoping the Anaheim Ducks, I think it was either if they lost the game and it looked like they were going to lose, but then Anaheim had to come back and win late. If that didn't happen, Calgary and Edmonton would have played each other in the first round that year, but instead we had to play Anaheim and got swept. And then this year, so this is only 3 times in 31 years that both the Edmonton Oilers and the Calgary Flames have made the playoffs. Because in 1992, Calgary missed the playoffs, but Edmonton made the playoffs. But then in 1993 to 1996, the Edmonton Oilers missed the playoffs while the Calgary Flames still made the playoffs. And then in 1997 to 2003, the Calgary Flames had their long drought of missing the playoffs, while the Edmonton Oilers, or in 2002, was the only year that both Calgary and Edmonton missed the playoffs. And then when Calgary finally made the playoffs in 2004, the Edmonton Oilers barely just missed the playoffs that year. And then after the lockout short season, or the lockout season, 2006, both teams made the playoffs, and if Calgary would have finished the Ducks off in Game 7, we would have played the Edmonton Oilers in the second round. But then after that season, from 2007 to 2016, the Edmonton Oilers, they had their long drought without missing the playoffs. In fact, from 2010 to 2014, both teams missed the playoffs. So it gives you an idea why it's been 31 years. And then in 2018, both teams missed the playoffs after 2017, both making it. And then in 2019 and 2020, I can put an asterisk by 2020 that the Oilers missed the playoffs. Well, technically the Oilers missed the playoffs in 2020 because they did not get out of their play-in series against the Chicago Blackhawks in a major upset. And then 2021, the Calgary Flames missed the playoffs. So that's why it's been 31 years. But we were long overdue to finally meet in the playoffs, and it just had to destined to happen. So now if we look at the regular season series, could we say we have a Homer series in play when it comes to the this series coming up? Because it was split 2-2, with the home team winning all 4 games. As first game of the regular season series was Game 1 of the regular season for the Calgary Flames. On Saturday, October 16th, the Calgary Flames lost to the Edmonton Oilers 5-2 in Edmonton. And I think, Connor McDavid had a hat-trick that game. The next time the Calgary Flames and the Edmonton Oilers played was Game 36 on Saturday, January the 22nd. Calgary lost that game 5-3 in Edmonton. So the Oilers won the first 2 games of this regular season series, both at home. And then Game 55 on Monday, March the 7th. This game was originally supposed to be played on December 27th, but the Calgary Flames were sick with COVID. But eventually that game got made up. The Calgary Flames won that game 3-1 in Calgary. And then Game 65 was definitely a wild one. There was definitely a lot of offense in that one. Maybe this could be one game, who knows. But on Saturday, March the 26th, the Calgary Flames beat the Edmonton Oilers 9-5. 9-5, so there's definitely a lot of offense in this one. As I say, both teams were 2-2. So that's how the regular season series went. So now if we look at the team rankings, before we look at the schedule and then I'll give my final thoughts on the series, I had to split this up between regular season and playoffs as well, just to give you an idea where the teams were at in the regular season, and then the playoffs give you an idea what series both teams had to face. But in the regular season, for the Calgary Flames, goals for, they scored 293 goals. That put them 6th in the National Hockey League. Goals against, they allowed 208, which put them 3rd in the National Hockey League. Power play, Calgary was 22.9% in the regular season. That put them 10th in the National Hockey League. And then the penalty kill, they were 83.2%. That put Calgary 6th in the National Hockey League. Now when it comes to the playoffs, this is where the numbers are skewed a little bit, especially the offensive numbers, but we were faced with Jake Oettinger. In terms of playoffs, and I had to use this stat to make it fair because not every team got to play 7 games, goals for per game, the Calgary Flames so far in the playoffs is 2.14. That put them 15th in the playoffs. But Calgary struggled to score goals because of Jake Oettinger was dying on his head. However, goals against per game, Calgary was an even 2. That put them first in the playoffs. And then when it comes to power play, well, Calgary's power play only was effective 8.3%, which put him 15th, but offense definitely wasn't on the menu when it came between the Calgary Flames and the Dallas Stars. However, penalty kill, it was 91.7% for the Flames in the playoffs, which put them 3rd. So I'm going to say when it comes to the numbers, both the regular season and the playoffs, the defensive numbers and the special team numbers, at least with the penalty kill, was a little more consistent than in the playoffs. But that's just because of the series, how it played out, and it was a goaltender's duel. So now when it comes to the Edmonton Oilers regular season, well, goals for, they scored 270 goals, or 290 goals I meant to say, which put them 7th, actually just below the Calgary Flames. So I'm going to say both teams definitely can dish out the goals. Well, 4 of the top 9 leading scorers are in the series. Goals against, though, this is where the Edmonton Oilers drop off a little. They allowed 252 goals, which put them 16th, which is in the middle of the pack. Power play, well, it's no surprise. Their power play is 26%, which puts them 3rd in the National Hockey League. Given they can throw out McDavid, Draisaitl, even Nugent Hopkins out there, that's a scary power play if you ask me. However, penalty kill, this is where it takes a little bit of a dip, as Edmonton's penalty kill in the regular season was 79.4%, which puts them 17th. Now when it comes to playoff numbers, well, there was definitely a lot more scoring for the Edmonton Oilers in this one, because goals for per game, Edmonton scored 3.86 goals per game, which put them 4th in the playoffs. Goals against per game, actually the Edmonton Oilers tightened up a little bit, 2.43, which put them 4th in the playoffs out of 16. Power play, well, their power play was even better in the playoffs against the Los Angeles Kings at 36.8%, which put them 2nd in the playoffs. So was their penalty kill, which was 87.5%, which put them 4th on the penalty kill. So I'm going to say when it comes to the numbers, looking at regular season and playoffs, the numbers were defensively consistent for the Calgary Flames, while the numbers offensively for the Edmonton Oilers were consistent, but it looked like their defense actually improved a little bit in the series as well against the Los Angeles Kings. But playoffs are a different animal when you're facing the same team 4 to 7 times as opposed to different teams throughout the regular season. But that's just how the numbers look when it comes to regular season and playoffs. So now this is where we get to the schedule, and then the last part I'll give my final thoughts. So here's the schedule for round 2, Western Conference semifinals between the Calgary Flames, who are the number 1 Pacific Division team, versus the Edmonton Oilers, the number 2 Pacific Division team. So once again, the Calgary Flames do have home ice advantage to see a red to their advantage if it comes to all 7 games. So game 1 will be on Wednesday, May the 18th, as the Calgary Flames will be hosting the Edmonton Oilers. That will be a 7:30 puck drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. Game 2 will be on Friday, May the 20th. Once again, the Calgary Flames will be hosting the Edmonton Oilers. That won't be until an 8:30 puck drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. That's going to be an even later night. And then when the series shifts up to Edmonton, Game 3, on Sunday, May the 22nd, the Edmonton Oilers will now be hosting the Calgary Flames. This will be a 6 p.m. puck drop at Rogers Place. And then Game 4 will be on Tuesday, May the 24th, as once again the Edmonton Oilers will be hosting the Calgary Flames. That'll be a 7:30 puck drop at Rogers Place. Now Game 5, it's scheduled on Thursday, May the 26th, where the scene will shift back to Calgary. Once again, it's TBD for puck drop at the Scotiabank Saddledome. That's if we need that. I'm pretty sure we will at least need that. Game 6, if we need it. I'm pretty sure we're still going to need that. That would be on Saturday, May the 28th, as the team will be back in Edmonton. Once again, puck drop, TBD to be determined at Rogers Place. And the Game 7, which I'm going to still say there might be a strong possibility we're going to need that. It'll be on Tuesday, May the 30th, back at home in Calgary in front of the Sea of Red. Scotiabank Saddle, once again, TBD for a puck drop. So I was about to say, we don't say consult your TV guide anymore, just consult the NHL and your digital program guide once we know if those games are needed. So once again, as I say, I am definitely thrilled and excited to finally get to play the Edmonton Oilers in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Even better, we got to get out of the first round to play the Edmonton Oilers in said Stanley Cup playoffs. Ideally, it would be a lot nicer if this was a conference championship for a chance to get to the Stanley Cup final, but a lot more things would have to happen given the playoff format. But what I'm expecting in this series, that for the Calgary Flames point of view, I am thinking that we should have a little easier time getting pucks behind Mike Smith compared to Jake Gaudreau, especially, although I don't think we're going to take the same approach we had to outlast the Dallas Stars, especially in Game 7 in overtime where we had to take 67 shots on Jake Gaudreau. Those are the shots that made it to him. Apparently I saw in the highlight, if you look at the highlight before the Johnny Gaudreau goal, they show the graphic that I think the Calgary Flames had like 125 shot attempts, like 58 or something, on the Jake Gaudreau. So I'm going to say if the Calgary Flames are able to pepper Mike Smith as much as Jake Gaudreau, I expect the Calgary Flames to still win this one 5-6 games. However, I'm not going to be surprised that this is going to need all 7 games. Just because the crest on the front, I think just for the storylines, there's going to be big games for Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. I think there's definitely going to be a lot more scoring in this series. I wouldn't be surprised if it is a little more like the Los Angeles Kings, where both teams will have a big game where they win like 5-1, 6-0. However, that's if everybody plays to their potential. Because if I look at the facets of each team, the offense, I'm going to still give the slight edge to Edmonton because they got Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and as well as Vander Kane. Their top-end talent definitely is a lot better than the Calgary Flames with Matthew Tkachuk, Johnny Gaudreau, and Elias Lindholm. However, I think beyond that, if you look down the lineup, I think Calgary should be able to have a little more depth when it comes to lines 2 and 3. Hopefully, guys like Dylan Dubé, Andrew Mangiapane, get to pick it up a little more. Same with Tyler Toffoli. That was one of the reasons why we brought him in. And of course, I'm looking forward to seeing Milan Lucic. How is he going to play, knowing that he signed that big contract with the Edmonton Oilers, and then we made that trade with him to swap some stinky contracts with James Neal, and the Edmonton Oilers are paying $2.6 million for both Milan Lucic and James Neal not to play for them. Wow, Milan Lucic, he's definitely embraced that role. So I'm going to be looking forward to that. And of course, Zach Cassidy and Matthew Tkachuk, how they do is they're going to have in this series. So that's another thing I look forward to. So the forwards, the top end talent gets the edge to Edmonton, but the overall depth when it comes to forwards, I'm going to still say Calgary has the depth if they can slow down, contain Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. And when it comes to defense, well, I'm going to still say Calgary has the edge as a group. Chris Tanev apparently is supposed to be back in the lineup after he missed Game 7, but Chris Tanev and Rasmus Andersson, Darnell Nurse still looks like a solid defenseman. And of course, it'd be interesting to see another former Flame Oiler in Brett Kulak, as Brett Kulak now is playing with the Edmonton Oilers, but I think from 1 through 6, maybe 7, because maybe we'll deploy Michael Stone as a defenseman and a forward. I'm going to still say Calgary has the edge when it comes to defense. And then goaltending, well, definitely, you still got to give the edge to the Calgary Flames with Jacob Markstrom over Mike Smith. I mean, Mike Smith has proven he can step it up in the playoffs and has solid save percentage numbers. I mean, heck, when we had Mike Smith in 2019, when we were allowing 50-plus shots against the Colorado Avalanche, Mike Smith definitely was a great goalie for us, all things considered. But now he's playing for the bad guys, and apparently he traded some jabs against Calgary. Looking forward to that series matchup. The goaltending, of course, Jacob Markstrom. Apparently, we were in it, so were the Edmonton Oilers. And eventually, he picked us over the Edmonton Oilers for being in net. And then I think when it comes to backups, if we need that, it might be a split between Dan Vladar and Mikko Koskinen, but I'm going to still say from what I've seen from Dan Vladar, I think he's an upgrade over Mikko Koskinen. So, given all this together, I still expect the Calgary Flames to outlast the Edmonton Oilers. I could see this being a short series if we pepper Mike Smith and contain their top-end talent. But I think, ultimately, the sports and hockey gods will make this go to 7 games. Don't tell me overtime again. It wouldn't surprise me if it came down to that, to be honest with you. Game 7 overtime, but I expect the Calgary Flames to ultimately come out on top, but I could see the Edmonton Oilers potentially pull this one out in 7 games if it's a hard-fought series, especially, let's say, if Connor McDavid had another 14-point series, but I'm still going to expect to see big numbers from all the forwards, top-end talent in this one, and I just say it's going to be great. I guess the one last X factor, I should say, when it comes to this matchup is the coaching. We got the master in Daryl Sutter, while Edmonton's got the new apprentice, the student in Jay Woodcroft, who took over from Dave Tippett in the mid-season, and that seemed to propel up the Edmonton Oilers. So it'll be interesting to see how the coaching matchup goes between Daryl Sutter and Jay Woodcroft. And, of course, the fan bases are going to be ready and at each other's throat, but just do it respectively. That's all I say. It's what makes Alberta great. What makes Alberta resilient is our 2 big cities. We disagree, but I just love the fact that we have this battle, and that's what makes Alberta great, is this Battle of Alberta, and I'm just looking so damn forward to it. And then, of course, whoever wins this series will take on either the Colorado Avalanche or the St. Louis Blues. I'll definitely be interested to see who pulls out of that, and then out in the East to get the bracket. You got the Battle of Alberta here. Well, there's actually a Battle of Florida, where you got the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning facing off against each other, which that would be that storyline right there. And then you got the Tony DeAngelo Bowl, as you got the Carolina Hurricanes, who now have Tony DeAngelo facing the New York Rangers, who pretty much told them to leave for stuff that happened. I'll just say that. So I'm looking forward to this Final Four, but I just say, are you excited for a Battle of Alberta? I definitely am. What do you think will happen in this Battle of Alberta? I think the start of the series will be very, very physical. There might be a few dances, kind of similar to the Dallas series, but I think as the games magnify a little more and get to the elimination games, I think things will clamp down a little. So I think it's going to be another case of 2 series, but it's going to be fun all the way. I think we're going to be in for a treat. We waited 31 years for crying out loud. It better be worth it. So anyway, as I want to say, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans' journey, home the Flames, Hitman, Roughnecks, Stampeders, as well as the Calgary FC, just make sure you hit like, subscribe, as I mostly do talk Calgary sports on my YouTube channel, where I recap games and stories and that. But I also do a variety of non-sports content, like personal vlogs, attempt to comedy, and also do share my experience when I'm on the road or a sporting event, as well as doing some vlogging to go. So if it all sounds like be interested to watch, to follow along with this Calgary sports fans' journey, you know what you do, just make sure you hit like, subscribe. I also have my other social media links down in the description below for other ways to follow me. Of course, I have my second channel in Brad Hornby Shorts, where I exclusively put my short front content on there. So once again, once the games happen, I'll put my quick post-game recap on my second channel. And then, of course, the next episode will be recapping this Battle of Alberta, hopefully as winners, and then still have a couple more episodes to go after that. But we'll see how this Battle of Alberta unfolds Calgary, Edmonton, finally, we meet. It's been so long, a new generation of fans will get to see what a Battle of Alberta is like. I don't think it's gonna be quite like what we saw in the '80s, and I don't think it's gonna be that 2010 or that 2020 game where Mike Smith and Cam Talbot at the time fight at center ice. I don't think that's going to happen unless it's a blowout game. Although if that happens, I give the height advantage to Jacob Markstrom if that battle does happen, but you never know. Maybe Jay Woodcroft and Daryl Sutter will be screaming at each other in this series. If this was in the 1980s, but this is in the 2020s, I don't think it's going to be here, but the hatred will still be there. There'll still be some blood. I think maybe the Red Cross might be looking for blood donations after every game. That crest, once they see each other and get tired of each other, that's all it is. So yeah. So I say thanks for watching. Go Flames go. Oilers suck. I have to throw that in there. And then of course I'll eventually get to make my Stockton Heat quick hits video for the next round. The Stockton Heat will be taking on the Colorado Eagles. And oh yeah, speaking of the Stockton Heat, they swept the Bakersfield Condors in the last series, which was that Battle of Alberta in the American Hockey League. So maybe that will be a side to come for up here with the main team. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.